DLC.
That's not really true, but I really want to talk about VR because this week Assassin's Creed Nexus VR entered my Meta Quest 3 headset, and I heard Anthony Taormina. I guess I got to say his name too. Anthony Taormina mentioned it last week, talked about it, but Anthony, he can be a little understated, and I don't think he did justice to how incredibly awesome this game is. I love Assassin's Creed Nexus VR. It is so cool how they have managed to translate all of these sort of iconic Assassin's Creed stuff into this VR environment, and doing it with gestures, doing it, with presence is a joy. I am digging this game so much. Listeners to the show will recall that I have a very specific kind of Assassin's Creed game I tend to like, and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think it has lingered as one of my very favorite games ever. I don't even know if it was number one on my top 5 the year it came out, but it has kept the real estate in my brain, and I just absolutely adore Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It is one of my very favorite open world action games. It's one of my very favorite game experiences. I put over 100 hours into it. I did everything except the ticky-tacky collection stuff. But man, I loved that game. And it's cool that in Assassin's Creed Nexus, not only do you get to play as Ezio, you get to play as Cassandra from that game as well. And they play differently, but I'm kind of bearing the lead here because what is so cool about Assassin's Creed Nexus VR. Well, let me just start at the beginning. First of all, I'm playing it on the MetaQuest 3. I don't know if it supports the 2. I think it does. But if you're familiar even remotely with the Assassin's Creed lore and premise, the idea of Assassin's Creed is that people in the future have this thing called an animus. They get inside it, and it transports them into the memories of people who existed hundreds of years ago. That sounds an awful lot like VR. And the fact that that metaphor already exists in the fiction of this world is pretty cool. It makes it an appropriate title to use in this way. But I think provided a really cool opportunity for the developers that they took full advantage of. And that is when you first start the game and you are in the sort of futuristic animus world, you are interacting with the futuristic cool people who work for the company name that I can't never remember, but like they're the future people, and you're dealing with them in this virtual space. And on the MetaQuest 3, it uses the pass-through feature so that it feels like you're sitting in your own space, in my case, my office, and you're seeing my office, and they overlay the menu system, the sort of really cool like interactive animus thing. So it feels like what I did was I put on this headset and I got in the animus. And that already I just think is so slick and cool. And the people that you're talking to, who you're seeing their virtual avatars, wandering around and walking up to you and telling you about these. You're going to have to go back to Renaissance Italy, and you're going to have to go back to ancient Greece, and you're going to have to do these quests and things, and we're going to have to collect. They're searching for the Antikythera, which is a pretty cool historical thing. And as they're telling you this stuff, they're in the virtual space, and then they log out. And the way they log out is their little avatar reaches up to their face and pulls off a headset, but you don't see it because, it's like if you reached up and pulled off your headset and it's tracking your hands, that's what you would see. And it's just, I don't know. It's a cool detail that makes it really feel like I'm doing the thing. And then you go into the memory, and now you're transported into the virtual reality, and now you're looking at your hands, and they've got the signature Assassin's Creed wrist knife thing. and they do this really awesome thing where you push a button and rotate your wrist back, and it makes the knife shoot out, which is just like already rad. That's what I want out of an Assassin's Creed first person experience is like do the thing and you do the thing. And you're wandering on these, these cities. I think, to be fair, obviously I'm a VR enthusiast, but it feels like you're inside a PS3 Assassin's Creed, right? And that's a bit of a bummer graphically, but I think, the PS3 Assassin's Creed looks pretty good. And I think the game looks really good. For a standalone headset, not tethered to anything, I think the game looks pretty good. And you're in these large environments and there's people walking around doing everything. Does it look like Uncharted 4? No. Does it look like Horizon Forbidden West? Definitely not. Does it even look like the Horizon VR game? No. But the Horizon VR game, I was tethered to the PlayStation 5. And, so it's not absolutely gorgeous, but I think it looks solid. And it certainly transported me into those worlds. And the worlds are big and detailed enough. There's enough stuff in them. I mean, you're wandering around, you're seeing things you can pick up and manipulate. Um, that element of it is cool, and I think the sort of size and scale and scope of some of the places is neat. And even better than that is it's got all of that Assassin's Creed stuff. So when I'm playing an Assassin's Creed game, what's the first thing I do? Well, I find the tallest place in town, I climb up to it, and I stand there and I synchronize, right? And the camera zooms out and it does this big sweep around me, and I get to all the cool, uh, you know, icons, all the points of interest in the city. Well, in the VR version, you do the same thing, except now I'm actually physically climbing up stuff. I'm getting to the top of things. And when I finally get to that perch point, that cool synchronization point, I grab this logo, I sync, and then it pulls back in that bird's eye view that you often get seamlessly in these Assassin's Creed games, except now it's in VR. And so I'm in this awesome like diorama world where I'm hovering above it, everything is tiny, but all the people are still wandering around, all the stuff is still present, all the buildings are there, all the stuff. I'm just pulled way back, looking down on it, and it's all in 3D, and it feels like I'm looking at this diorama or this sort of model, this miniature model that's alive, and I could point out, pick out all the places and see all the cool points of interest. It's rad. It feels cool. And even better than that, when I leave that view and come back to my body, I'm standing on that perch. I put my arms out horizontal or perpendicular to my sides, in like a T pose, press a button, and then I do the leap of faith. And I, fall into a bale of hay, land in the bale of hay, and there's hay all around me. I think it's rad. I- the fact that they did that in this game in a VR in first person, 1-to-1 size, I feel like I'm jumping off of something. And the fact that I never even had a whiff of motion sickness or anything like that, that's all in the past. I mean, maybe I'm unique in that regard. I don't think so. I think these games have just gotten so good that you don't feel that. In fact, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR has parkour in it. And the parkour is insanely fun. And it works just like the Assassin's Creed games from, the 2D versions. So you're coming up to geometry in the world, like, there'll be, broken floorboards, or you'll be up on a rooftop and there'll be a gap between roofs, or there'll be the like planks of wood that'll be up above on the second floor that are in a very convenient line that you have to hop from one to one. Excuse me. And, um, you just hold a button just like you would and press forward and you sprint and you move over those things, but it's in first person and you're gliding through the environment, running on things, leaping up to stuff. And it's so rad how you'll run and leap to a higher point, a ledge or a windowsill or something, and you have to reach out with your hands and grab onto it by pushing the middle finger buttons, the grab buttons on the Oculus controllers. And so you're running fast and then you're leaping and you have to change from that sort of like holding A to grabbing on. And it actually takes some skill and it's really cool. And there are, just like you would find in a regular Assassin's Creed game, there are sort of these timed side quest sort of mini game things of how can you parkour through the city in a certain amount of time, and it's a blast. I found myself doing that, like jumping over rooftops, grabbing onto things, getting to the top of stuff, climbing things. You can climb almost anything, just like in Assassin's Creed. It doesn't just have giant grip points. You're constantly using it. The com, excuse me, pardon me. The combat is a blast. You've got different kinds of weapons. You can throw things. You've got the sword combat. I think is very similar to sword combat in a lot of VR games. You're parrying to open up opportunities to slash. That's not reinventing the wheel, but they also add these cool like dash things where you can pull out your assassin's wrist blades and dash forward and stab dudes in the neck. You can do the awesome Assassin's Creed thing of being on a high point, looking down on a guard who's, doing their patrol, and you can open up your Assassin's Creed knives and leap down upon them and stab them and assassinate them. And it's super fun because you're actually doing it. You push a button to jump, but you're actually making the motions and stabbing their necks. It's rad. And there's, kind of very light puzzle manipulation elements of like grabbing things in the environment that work very well in VR. There's, storytelling, characters that you meet, locations you'll go to. And I don't know, I just think they knocked this out of the park. If you're skeptical about VR in the regard of like, oh, it looks dated, it looks, the graphics, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's not going to blow your socks off. It's going to look like a PS3 game. It's not going to be, the most incredible looking game. But I think it looks great. I think it's very immersive. I think the environments look awesome. And I'm just having so much fun playing it and revisiting these characters that I actually like from the series. It just works so well, and they managed to come up with so many clever things to do in VR, and the way you do them is almost always very fun. I dig it.
That's really good to hear, Jeff, because as a former Ubisoft employee, I recall working on a plethora of VR games, and some hit, some didn't, but I think it really, I mean, this is in my mind is maybe it paid off that Ubisoft invested in VR really early. They put out experiences like Eagle Flight and Werewolves Within
Yeah,
and Star Trek Bridge Crew.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really and very happy to hear that there's no motion sickness for this one, because I guarantee you that if I was T posing into a leap of faith, I'd leap of faith onto my floor, I think, face first.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I found no problem with that regard. And again, it's moving for you in a lot of these things. You jumping over things, leaping as you're just pushing forward and holding a button like you would in the regular Assassin's Creed games. And I found none of that made me queasy. But it also has a lot of comfort options. I have most of the comfort options off. The only thing that I use is the snap to turn, which I find very comfortable. Um, but other than that, I have, smooth motion, all that stuff. They even have settings for people who are afraid of heights. Like it allows you to, I don't even know what it does. I think it allows you to not do some of the things you have to get high up to do. Um, I don't have that problem, so I didn't turn it on. But I think it's cool that they go so far in trying to make people feel comfortable in playing it. You can play seated or standing. I found standing to be much more fun. it's just they do a lot of cool stuff where you're like overhearing conversations and peeking through slats and boards to see people talking or walking underneath um an open grate where people are walking above you and overhearing them, and all that stuff happening around you is really fun in VR because you're actually looking up and noticing things in your environment. There's hidden stuff, little collectibles to be found in every level that are cleverly hidden. There's lots of drawers to open and cupboards to open and boxes to open and things inside them to physically manipulate. It's just it's great fun. It's great fun. I really am impressed with how they translated Assassin's Creed into VR with Nexus.